Battleline Podcast. I'm Ian Scotto.
I'm Tonto, Chris Peranto.
And we were both back from sunny Florida, which we'll get into. But for the new listeners, every week we try to interview different inspirational figures, whether they're special operations veterans or military contractors, musicians, actors. In this case, war correspondents. And we're really excited to have Hollie McKay on for this show. But before we get into everything, CBD is becoming more and more popular, and people are, trying to figure out what's the best brand to go with because there's so much out there. The market is so saturated, and that's really where Ned comes in. They produce the highest quality, full spectrum CBD extracted from organically grown hemp plants, all sourced from an independent farm in Paonia, Colorado. Ned is a wellness brand offering science-backed and nature-based solutions that offer an alternative to prescription and over-the-counter drugs. And we also can't speak more highly of their immunity blend and their new Mellow product, because magnesium is really essential in recovery and muscle building, and people are loving it. And I know a lot of our listeners have checked out Mellow.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I haven't tried it yet, even though they've given me a couple samples. I'll be honest with you, the CBD oil and the immunity blend, they have me feeling so great. I don't know if I want to mess with it right now and mess up the combination that I've got.
Yeah, no, I don't like to overdo it on supplements either. I'll usually just try one at a time, and then that way you could really see if it's making a difference.
Yeah, and I recommend that. Give it a shot. I will soon, but man, the other products that I use, the CBD oil, the body butter, and definitely the immunity blend have really made my life much better. It's a great combination of stuff, along with other things to keep your body healthy that I recommend everybody should try, especially if you're taking prescription pills. Take the natural stuff and get yourself off those prescription pills like I used to be on when I was going through my highs and lows of depression. It's made a world of difference in my life, and I'm healthy, extremely healthy right now.
Yeah, if you're suffering from anxiety, sleeplessness, any of that, Ned has really got you covered. Their CBD products do contain a minuscule amount of THC, but it will not get you high, nothing like that. So if you want to check out Ned and try their CBD for yourself, we have a special offer for the podcast audience. Go to helloned.com/Battleline or enter Battleline at checkout for 15% off your first one-time order or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. That's HELLONED.com/Battleline to get 15% off your first one-time order or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. Thank you, Ned. We have the link to all that in the description as well, in case you're driving around and want to click on it later. So, be safe out there, and just remember to check them out after you're done with the show, or right now if you can. Also, this episode is sponsored by Hero Soap Company, herosoapcompany.com. No chemicals, dyes, or fragrances, no parabens that are found in common soaps that link to breast cancer and reproductive complications in men, which ever since learning that, I sometimes look at soap just in the grocery store or CVS, and almost all of them have parabens. And knowing that, I'm glad that I've, stuck with Hero Soap. They just launched a new organic fragrance-free pet wash for your furry friends. Also, they have new scents in their body wash. They have lavender, the pines, the meadow, lime, and the Arctic. They all include natural ingredients that your skin craves to stay hydrated, like olive oil, essential oils, and aloe vera. They're veteran-owned by our friend Lucas, focused on veteran charities, which include the charity Chris founded, 14th Hour Foundation, who they donate to regularly. And for all subscription purchases on soap, they match that amount of soap and send it overseas to a deployed location. Their subscription is shipped straight to your door every month, so no worry of running out. Dudes always run out of their products before buying new or more. No contract with the subscription. You can cancel at any time. Let freedom clean. I love their stuff. I love all the different scents. I just the soap. I love the charcoal. They have so many different scents. You'll want to try them all once you start trying some of them, or do the subscription.
And if and for all you veterans out there or guys that are serving, when you smell the different, it does bring you back to those days of pine oil and being out in Fort Benning in the woods and the dirt. But it's a good feeling that you get back. I'm actually have the wood. Is it Woodlands? The woods I'm using right now, and smells like Fort Benning all over again. And it's fantastic, guys. And it does condition your skin, works very, very well. And that's the only soap I use. I've still got 2 bars left before I get my next 5 bars down the road, which is fantastic soap. Give them a try. And Lucas is a tremendous individual as well.
Kick ass. Yeah, check them out. HeroSoapCompany.com. Offer code Battleline for 15% off. And you can combine that with the 10% off for your subscription on the hard soap, not the body wash. So check it out. With that, let's get into everything.
From Omaha, Nebraska to New York City, from planet Earth to extraterrestrial life in space, a podcast with no equal, engaged in unconventional warfare through your speakers and headphones. This is a show about embracing the suck, conquering your demons, and finding God in the face of adversity. Chris Tonto Peranto.
Twitch is on. Motherfucker, I'm going to shoot you in the face.
Ian Scotto.
Ian and I have been dating for a long time.
You are now tuned into the Battleline Podcast.
The switch is on. Battleline Podcast, and as I said, both of us, I just got back from Florida. You got back from Florida a few days ago, and I had a great time. I mean, I love the state. I love South Florida, but I was not where you were. We didn't cross paths. So
yeah, I was up near DeLand, which is where Stetson University is. Actually, Stetson's a really cool little hole. I should say hole in the wall, but it's an unknown little gem there, and really it's Central Florida is where it is. And I love it. I going out to Florida because I can get up at 7 a.m. and just throw on a pair of shorts and a shirt and go running. It's just you get out there in that sun, just makes you happy. And I was just coming from Nebraska where we had -18, -19 temperatures, so it was great to thaw out, and it was a fantastic training out there. I was doing a Battleline Tactical. My training company had a stress fire course out there at Deep Woods, USA, where Rich Graham has his range, and it made just the brightness come back in my life, not just the course, but just being out in the sun. 70 degrees in February, very low humidity. It's no wonder people want to be snowbirds. I'm almost 50 next week, so I think I'm going to become a snowbird myself. Definitely get away from the snow during the wintertime.
At some point, because as far as I know, I don't know what you've said, but you're moving somewhere else that is not.
That is, yeah, we'll be Florida, but we will definitely look for a place. And my family, my wife and I have been scoping out places for condos to have in Florida. I love Florida. Tremendous. It's just, I can't get my kids to, they've grown up in the cold and they've grown up in seasons. And we've been in, we go there in the summertime. My kids hate the humidity and I'm a dad and I do care what my kids want to do, but the -18, I've had it. So we're moving farther south, but no, we are getting a condo in that area, whether it be Destin or DeLand or Naples, Florida, somewhere within there. I love Naples. I think Naples has the most beautiful sunsets in the world. They're incredible. So that's where I'd like to go, but family votes too. So my vote counts. Sure. About that much, which is, if you're seeing us, guys, it's about an inch. That's how my vote counts. But I know you're looking at moving down there too, somewhere.
So I'll give you the update, man.
I was.
I had a great time there. I looked at places. I mean, and what you get for your money there is amazing. And I was very much convinced I was going to do it. And I was actually having a great time there. And I'll be completely candid. The day after, I got very depressed thinking about honestly being away from family and friends that far away. I am not someone who likes to get on a plane all the time. And I was just thinking it'd probably be very rare that I would go and see my parents. It'd probably be 2 or 3 times a year, which for me is just not a lot. I'm their only son. I have a great relationship with them, which means a lot to me. Great relationship with my friends, many of which I grew up with who live around here. So I just ended up thinking to myself, I mean, what's more important, like the climate and all that stuff, or people you love? I mean, to me, that's really what's more important. So I'm going to be moving. I mean, I'm looking at like Connecticut, but I can't bring myself to move that far. I even think of when I get into funks and stuff like that, man, there's no one who I could just drive to at 3 a.m. and be like, I'm having a tough time. And it happens, man. I'll be the first to say it happens now and again.
Well, and you got time, dude. You got plenty of time. You got a lot of life. So it's not a decision that if you make this, I'm going to Connecticut or I'm going to stay in New York, that 10 years down the line, you can't change your mind and still be fine with it. That's the way life is. You make a decision, but you go with what you need to do now. And if that changes 10 years, 11 years down the line, okay, well, it changes. And that's the beauty of being successful like you are, is that you're going to continue to be successful, which allows you to have options. So you do have those options. And I think that's
it is awesome having those options. And it's like, I love it there. If everybody, if people that I knew lived around there, but I just thought of the fact that, I don't know, going out everywhere on your own and all that gets old. And yeah, you'll make new friends, but that stuff happens organically. I mean, I consider you a good friend, and I didn't, I didn't have some plan of like meeting a guy who was in the Benghazi attacks. Like, we just connected, and that's how life goes. And sometimes you make those connections, sometimes you don't. And I could see it getting very lonely as much as I love it there.
Well, I'm saying that's the thing. It's just not the right time. Timing is everything, whether it's in relationships, whether it's friendships, whether it's business, anything. Timing is really what makes things successful or not. And if you force stuff, it's like the old adage, trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. It doesn't work. And if that's what it feels like, then you just don't do it. But you don't look at it like, oh my gosh, this is my only window. I'm never going to have this window again. That's when people feel bad on decisions, and they always feel bad on whatever decision they make because they think that's the only decision they're ever going to make, and that's the only opportunity they're ever going to have, and that's not correct. It's like, okay, well, what's the best for me right now? That's my decision. Okay, there's options down the road, so if I change my mind, I can do that. But being successful and having a positive mindset is how you're able to keep those options open, which you are. So it's like, yeah, you make the decision to stay the East Coast. It doesn't mean that you may not consider Florida down the line, maybe when you have a family or you have friends down there, or Texas, or I mean, who knows? You may want to go to Salt Lake City, Utah. Who knows, man? But those
Utah's
options,
beautiful.
It is beautiful. It's just the winters again, awful. Awful.
Yeah, I also just think, I really felt this. I mean, God gives you that intuition of this is the right move or this is not. So even though I was feeling down, I realized like God kind of put that into my heart for a reason. Do you really want to do this? Do you really think this is the best decision? And yeah, you can't force things, man.
Always pray on it too. Yeah, that's it. And that's it. Hey, if I'm not sure, pray on it, and then be open to those signs or answers or whatever, however you want to call it. I do the same thing. I know Florida is where I want to be, at least during the wintertime. And that's because, and family, my wife loves it too. And it's, I've done a lot of stuff down there as far as speaking and training and friendships and so forth. So, and actually I'm heading back down there to do a book signing at the Alamo in Naples on March. I believe it's their anniversary. And Alamo is a huge range in Naples, Florida.
I think of Texas when I think of Alamo.
Yeah, you think that. And they're like, no, but it's Naples. And I'll be down there doing a book signing on the 13th and 14th. Then I head back to Naples 2 weeks later, and I do a corporate speaking event. A lot of corporate speaking events in Naples. So I'm going to be back in Florida 3 more times in the next month, which
it's also the only state that's open the way that it is.
Yeah, it is. But people are still they're very respectful. I didn't see where people were butting up to me, but you're at least what I saw. But you're right. People are people.
I mean, it's a big state. I think people have different opinions on the whole thing. Whatever. But I mean, I do feel like we're finally turning a tide on this whole thing, and things are actually looking very positive no matter where you go. Just cases down and, different options coming with the vaccine. And, my dad is 70. He got the vaccine. Very little side effects for him, which was good. So another thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know if you know this, but friends of the show, Covino and Rich, as I was on my way to do this, they they just now finished their last show on Sirius XM, as they will no longer be on the platform.
I saw something on Instagram. I didn't hear the show, but I saw, or maybe it was a separate. I know there's something that was going on Instagram, and they did the video of what's going on. But yeah, hey, if that's what they want to do, they're like the forerunners of podcasts, man. Those guys are like the godfathers, like people that have started before we started, and they've led this to where podcasts are now, and they still are at the top of their game.
They haven't, I mean, they've really been Sirius XM company guys for 16 years. So even if they do jump into the podcast world, I actually would say it's them going into new territory if that's what they do.
Well, what I mean is, they're, as far as talk radio goes, they've been around forever.
Doing it for a long time.
Yep.
And I do think they'll be fine, and they'll be on another platform for sure. Just as a radio guy, I could see what's going on. Is we spoke about it, like Jason Ellis no longer on the platform, but he I believe was let go of. They got an offer, and I feel like from what I know, it was just a very small, low offer, and they weren't happy with it. For people who've done it as long as they have, but the company is, I believe, spending like $125 million a year on Howard. They have that huge space in Midtown Manhattan, and they're going to cut things. And, they got to stay afloat somehow. And also the competition of podcasts.
Well, but those guys are, again, they're people like that, like myself. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts out there, but those guys are who I listen to overseas all the time. Because they were hilarious, and they were unscripted, and they said what they wanted to say, and they're still like that. And they still have that, I don't know what it is, that thing that you just want to listen to, because when they're together, it's just, they're going to be great, and much respect to both of them, because I honestly wouldn't even be interested in doing stuff like this if I hadn't listened to them when I was deployed. And there's a lot of veterans that can tell you the same thing. Like, man, those guys were hilarious, because they said things that we would say in the team rooms, the comments, all the off comments and things that were like, man, those guys get us there. And it's awesome. It's awesome just to think back, because whenever I listen to them, it reminds me of being in Kabul or Afghanistan or Kandahar or Baghdad or wherever else we were, because they kind of made you feel like you're back in the States, like you're kind of home. That's why I love those guys. And I know we need to have Covino back on when I'm available, so I can kind of fanboy when I'm on with him.
I think we could get them both on, especially when they announce what they're doing, because I think they're going to want to get the word out for wherever they're going. So hopefully we'll get them both on. And what else I wanted to mention is, it's kind of funny that the day I left Florida is the day that CPAC came to Florida. And there were years where I was like, I would like to go. There's cool people in the conservative movement that, I listen to their stuff, and even in the talk radio field and all that. I got to be honest, this year was not something that I was like, I'm dying to go to. It's like, I think we both have the same opinion. I'm like, I've had enough politics.
I've had enough forever. I've had enough for my lifetime. And people always say, hey, didn't I see you at the Republican National Convention? Did I see you at CPAC? The only convention that I've ever been to is the Democratic National Convention.
Really? Why were you there? I got to hear that story.
Just to see if I could start some shit. Complete honesty, just to see if somebody would say something to me, just to start some shit. I got invited to go down there. Honestly, I did. I got invited actually by Sean Hannity. He goes, why don't you come down to the Democratic National Convention? You can be on my show every evening. And I was like, hell with it. Let's go. And I did. I walked around everywhere. I know people recognize me. I walked by CNN booths. Even the Fox tent. Who was the big Benghazi hater at Fox at that time? He was on the 5 too. But I always see him, and I know he
Williams, maybe.
There you go. And I walked by. I said, just say something. And nope, nothing. And to be honest, it was a great experience though, because I'd never been to one, and it was fun, kind of just being that. I wasn't an asshole to anybody. I didn't say anything to anybody. I just wanted to see if all this talk was just talk about you guys are liars. You guys are idiots. You guys are not telling the truth. This is I'm here. Say something to me. And I would walk around everywhere just on my own. Nobody there, just me everywhere. And nobody said a word. Actually, the only people that said a word when I come through security, the Secret Service guys and the state police would always recognize me. They're like, "Are you Tano?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." He goes, "What the hell are you doing here?" I said, I'm just trying to see if I can start some crap. That's all. And I was on Alex Jones' show once on a Newsmax, and then Hannity. I was on Hannity's every night, and that was when I was doing a lot of the news. So the reason I was there is to be on Hannity was like he wanted me. I said, "Sure, I'll go down there." And Fox paid for it. It wasn't Fox that paid for it. I know I didn't. It wasn't Fox. I don't get paid by Fox. I never have. But it was really because I was only on his show maybe 5 minutes at a time every night. It was mainly for me, just as I'm here. You guys are all these, and this is when the trolls were bad. I was getting threats. I'm going to kick your ass. Oh, you're full of crap. Oh, you're a baby killer. And I'm here.
Don't you think most of those people though are like,
yeah,
they don't even go anywhere. They just stay on the computer all day long. They probably weren't even there, because most of the people in the media, like on TV, they may say horrible things on TV, but they're not the type of people usually who are going to go up and start.
And you're right. But that was also me learning. I didn't know at the time. Like, well, what's the best place for me to go? Okay, I'm here. I didn't want anything to happen, but it was me saying, "Come on, guys! If we're going to talk shit."
I'm curious. There was no one who respectfully came up to you and said, like, "Hey, do I have my facts wrong?" And maybe just wanted to learn.
And that would have been fantastic, dude. It would have given me a new perspective. It would have probably shown some light on, and nobody did that either. I have respect. One guy did that, but not during the DNC. It was actually after the Benghazi hearing. The third one I went to down in the Capitol building, the ones that weren't televised. I mean, none of them were ever televised. I did 3 different. This was the last one when Trey Gowdy was doing his report. So we had to go down there again. And he always badmouthed us. He always said, "Hey, they're just trying to hurt Obama and they're trying to hurt Hillary." And that was Elijah Cummings, the late Elijah Cummings. But after I did my third testifying, and he was there every time I testified. He was there in the committee. He's part of it. He's the one Democrat that came up to me after it was all done. No, he never stopped talking shit. But after it was done, he came up and he shook my hand. He says, "You did a great job." He says, "I'm proud." I says, "I'm proud that what you did. I respect what you did." And he said, "Thank you." And
Elijah Cummings.
Elijah Cummings, yeah. And I did. It gave me a newfound respect for him, even though he wouldn't do it publicly. At least he had the balls enough in that setting around everybody. It wasn't like he was doing it in secret. I mean, Adam Schiff was there, Trey Gowdy was there, and then all their little minions that run around, all the little lawyers that are on their staff, and Congresswoman Duckworth was there, and he did it in front of everybody. And I really wish he would have said that outwardly to when he was on the news. But it was still respectful to me, at least behind the scenes. And it gave me a newfound respect for him. And I still remember it. I still remember his hand coming out and shaking and looking into his eyes and seeing that I thought he was very sincere. So, yeah, that was one thing that came out of the Benghazi hearings with, as far as politics goes. Some of them still have immense integrity. But I also saw on the other end that when it comes to the media, they're going to say what the talking heads want them to say on what their party wants them to say publicly. And again, that's where also the media, my version of the media, started to go, okay, this is horse shit. I need to start getting away from this, because this is not what real people are really like. This is just what they want you to see on TV because it's politics. And but I do remember that. But other than that, bro, yeah, that would have been great at the DNC, and I probably would have went on their show if they would have asked me to. The opportunities were there, and I made myself available, but nobody.
I just always think it is good when you see people who could say, "Hey, I was wrong in this," and they want to learn. We got to get to Hollie McKay, but I'm even just thinking of really quick in my head because we got to bring her on. But Walter Jones, Congressman Walter Jones, who died, was like a huge supporter of the war in Iraq. That was like his big thing. He's the guy who called French fries freedom fries. That. And he was and he was very hawkish. And he said when guys came back to his district losing, limbs, he started to question himself. And he said, was this really necessary? And he changed his stance on that. And he spent the rest of his congressional career trying to redo his mistakes, basically, and get the country back on the right track. And whether you agree with them or not is not even what I'm talking about. I think it just takes a lot for someone to say, I voted this way and my principles completely changed. And Yeah, I get there's people who don't feel that way. Like Dan Crenshaw is a hawk, and there are Republicans. We might get into with Hollie, but it's not a partisan issue in terms of foreign policy, in terms of war. But I just think it takes a big person to say my values on this have changed as I've learned more, no matter what the issue is.
That then you're a strong, courageous person. If you're sticking to those, I know we got to get to Hollie too, dude. I'm sorry, but you're sticking down that line and you're staying down here. I can't change. I can't be. Then you've got some problems, and you've got to be able to say, hey, I made a mistake. It's okay to say it. It's more courageous to say, hey, I made a mistake, than to stick to that narrative, even though you know it's wrong. It shows a lot of integrity for someone to say, you know what, I thought this way. This is what I had. I wasn't correct. This is what I have now. And I think now, and that shows a lot of integrity. I really believe that. Doesn't mean you always have to change your mind on everything, but if it shows that you were wrong and you're able to say, hey, I was wrong here, then, and I have respect for that, because I've been wrong a lot. And even on Iraq too. I think back now, I loved being in Iraq. I loved working in Iraq. Did I think we needed to be there? Looking back now, and a lot of my veteran buddies out there be like, Tano, you're an asshole. You're an idiot. Why? I don't think so anymore. I know we need to be in Afghanistan, definitely, at least initially. Iraq, I don't think so. I really don't. I'm not going to say 100% for sure, because I don't know all the facts. I was just a little minion ground pounder on the ground. I don't really know if really we needed to be there at that time. And as far as overthrowing dictators, I think that's something that we've realized now. It doesn't work. You don't overthrow dictators. All it creates is a vacuum of power and destroys countries. Dictators are dictators for a reason. It's because that's how they can control their country, and it's the best for those countries. Look at Syria, look at Libya, look at Iraq. We've completely destroyed them by removing dictators. And I think if anything we learned from counterterrorism and foreign policy is that we don't do that anymore. We don't go in there and try to overthrow dictators, because what is behind the dictators once they're gone is 100 times worse than they are. And I've seen that in 3 separate countries. So anyway.
Yeah, wow. Hey, so before we bring on Hollie McKay, Fort Scott Munitions is a manufacturer of multi-federal patented solid copper and brass CNC spun ammunition that is designed to tumble upon impact in soft tissue, leaving devastating wound channels for faster bleed out and quicker incapacitation. This ammunition was originally developed to innovate and improve on the standard of military-grade ammunition design. It was found that not only did the TUI ammunition outperform competitors in the self-defense industry, but it quickly became apparent that it would be a top contender for hunters alike. With the ammunition being CNC spun, the tolerances are some of the tightest on the market, ensuring that we receive the same results with each pull of the trigger. Fort Scott Munitions is available throughout privately owned businesses in all 50 states, as well as directly online. And I will give out the address, of course, that most of you know by now. But on your last Florida course, I know that this is what you guys shoot with. This is what you trust.
Yeah, it's fantastic ammunition. That tumble on impact is man, it dang near penetrates anything. It reminds me of that Johnny Dangerously movie who was it, Joe Piscopo, says, hey, I got this gun, and it shoots it. It goes through walls, and it goes through cars, and it goes through, he said schools, but of course that's not the right thing to say nowadays back then with it. But it just is a tremendous ammo. It works well. And they're working their butts off to get it out to you guys, and they go first come, first serve. It doesn't matter the order. Once the ammunition is in, it gets out to the next person, whether you've ordered 1 box or you've ordered 200 boxes, which shows a lot of integrity within the company. So guys, check them out. If you haven't done so, once you shoot them, it's all you're going to shoot. And it's some of the best home defense ammunition on the market. 100%.
So don't take it from me. Take it from Chris. FortScottMunitions.com, FortScottMunitions.com, and use the exclusive promo code Battleline for 15% off your order. That's only available to our listeners. Fort Scott Munitions is a proud supporter of Chris Peranto, Battleline Tactical, and the Battleline Podcast. Go there now. Link is in bio, or the description, I should say. FortScottMunitions.com. Promo code Battleline. And you heard me talk about them last week, but we had an issue with the link. So I'm mentioning them again. We are so proud to have on board. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? You and I have both had experiences where we needed to speak to someone who is professionally trained and a therapist. And that's why this is such a great resource for whether it's veterans or it's civilians like myself who need the opinion of someone to help them out during tough times or maybe even just regular times.
Yeah, and it does. Sometimes it's easier to get stuff off your chest to, and I wouldn't say a stranger, but a licensed professional that they're there to listen to you talk and not be judged, where sometimes it's tough to listen talking to somebody that because, or even a family member. And not saying you don't want to do that. Sometimes but there are times where you just want to talk and have somebody listen. And having that professional there, licensed professional, listen to you, which is one of the best things happened to me in the beginning, and helped me get a lot off my chest is the way to go. And I always recommend that. And then as you go down the line, you just determine if you want to stay with them or not. But at least initially, you get in there and it's somebody that is not going to judge you. They just want to listen and help. And so highly recommend that. If you're going through hard times right now, just talking to somebody is cathartic and is also therapeutic. And it also allows you to make that decision if you want to keep doing that or, okay, I'm going to go another route, but you don't know unless you know. And that's where you have to try it first. And we're going with a company that has licensed professionals to listen to you is what I would recommend, at least at the initial stage. And then,
especially during a time like this is really a great way to go go about getting that help. So BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It is professional counseling done securely online. There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas, and the service is available for clients worldwide. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room as with traditional therapy. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches so they make it easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available, which is great. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. These two, for example, Marcel is an excellent listener, and I'm mostly impressed with how much he remembers from each session. I feel like he genuinely cares and helps me come up with strategies that work for me. I would recommend him to any of my friends. And then another one here. So far, I've had 2 sessions with Rebecca, and she's been a tremendous help to me in finding solutions and working towards personal goals. Rebecca has a very relaxed demeanor and is an excellent listener, and I felt she was able to quickly establish a good rapport with me. So visit battlelinepodcast.com/BetterHelp. I know I said that address last episode, and it didn't forward to the right place. So if you didn't get to it last week, it should be all good to go now. So battlelinepodcast.com/BetterHelp. That's better, HELP, and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. So go there now. Once again, battlelinepodcast.com/BetterHelp. So joining us for the first time on Battleline Podcast, Hollie McKay, National Bureau correspondent and human rights journalist covering Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, Syria, Pakistan, Yemen, Myanmar, global risk specialist and outreach director for Burnt Children Relief. Many of you also know her from Fox News previously. And of course, we want to talk about your latest book, your debut book, really, Only Cry for the Living, Memos from Inside the ISIS Battlefield. And it's an honor to have you on.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Okay, you loosen up. I know you're not like this for real. I've had a few drinks with you. Loosen the hell up, Hollie. Let's go.
Where are the cigars?
I know where this lady can smoke cigars more than. What was that? Where we're at? We're at that event. I think you smoked more.
That's right. And they were hand rolling the cigars.
Hand rolling cigars. She was smoking more than Pete Rose, brother. Pete Rose was for gambling.
I think I smoked enough. I made myself pretty much sick, but yeah, it was a good night.
Yeah, it was. That's good to have you and good to see you again. It's been how many years? 4 years, 5 years, a lot of years.
Yeah, I think we had drinks. Last time we had drinks at the Irish bar when you were in New York. So that would have been probably about 2 or 3 years ago, I think.
Yeah, so it's been a while. Well, it's good. Now your book and everything coming out, but I know we have questions lined up, but I always talk over Ian, and I got to stop.
No,
doing
not
that.
at all.
But
last episode, I was the one who talked over the guests the whole time. I listened back and I was like, Ian, shut the hell up. But yeah.
Honestly, Hollie, before we get started, the normal interview stuff, at least tell people a little bit about yourself and get into what you're doing, what you did, what you're doing now, and then we'll get into the because I still want to know how Kurdistan was, because I lost touch a couple years ago. And you were still going. So yeah, tell a little bit about yourself and your ballet days too. Get into all that.
So I am originally from Australia. I was a ballet dancer.
Hence the great accent. So I love the Australian.
I thought that was South Georgia, dude. Wasn't that?
I'm from Brooklyn. Come on. So I was a ballet dancer, and long story short, I ended up, I always had a love for writing and for the foreign policy world, but I got injured when I was 18, so it sort of cut my plans a lot. I ended up going back to school in Sydney. I got pretty bored fairly fast. I ended up going to New York to finish my degree. I think I was 20. I became an intern. I didn't even know what an internship was, but everybody talked about it. It sounded cool. So I ended up becoming an intern at Fox, and then they sort of hired me and sponsored me, and I came to the US and was in New York for a little bit, then went to Los Angeles, and I was sort of much more of a general assignment reporter, so I'd be covering a lot of court. I'd be doing all the sort of Oscar celebrity hoopla business, which actually was really surprisingly fascinating training ground, because you really learn to cut through a lot of the BS, or really smell that sort of BS. So I really, and you sort of see all these people that are kissing everyone's ass.
There's BS in Hollywood? There's not BS in Hollywood, is there? Really?
Yeah, there's so much ass kissing, and I just was like, I don't want to be around this anymore. But yeah, I always had a love for the world and for different cultures and trying to kind of understand the human stories. So I sort of segued into that and covering a lot of the overseas conflicts and things. So that led me on a path through the Arab Spring, and then, of course, the proliferation of ISIS in around 2014 in Iraq, and that became kind of my obsession for 4 or 5 years of constant going back and forth through Iraq and through Syria, and trying to piece together something that was a little bit deeper than just one side of the story. And I really tried to see things from every angle possible, and so that was kind of what led the book, which started with just a bunch of notebooks all piled up. I think there's about 20 of them in storage. So yeah, I decided it was time to kind of compile them a little bit, and hopefully someone will read it.
When you were
and by the way, someone will read it, because it's the number one selling category on Amazon right now.
Yeah. It's exciting.
Because when you were going over there were you always taking notes, or did you think, hey, I'm going to write a memoir, I'm going to write a book about, or did you just start happening? I'm just down there, I'm going to take notes and diary.
I mean, I always had in the back of my head, it'd be great to write a book. I wasn't quite sure what that would be. So yeah, I was always a big note taker. I'm a very old school journalist in that I like to sit with people, and being a writer gives me the privilege of being able to sort of sit and not have to worry about big cameras, and so people could really open up. And I always, I rarely ever recorded the interviews. I preferred to sort of sit there and be able to kind of write them, and really beyond just the interviews, what I really did in my notebooks was more just try to take note of the details, because it always comes down to the details, what they're wearing, expressions on their face, the weather, what is going on, because that's what brings the reader in and makes it immersive. So for me, a lot of what I wanted to do was just kind of remember those details. And that's what writing down, was really great for me. And it really wasn't until, 2017, I guess, more toward the end of the trajectory, that I decided that, I wanted to kind of put it together as memos in a book. So it's sort of a little bit more raw, a little, not as polished as maybe some of the books you'll read, but I hope that it kind of gives a bit of a raw sensibility throughout the process.
Well, and those details too, especially for veterans or guys that have served in northern Iraq or Mosul or served in Syria. Those details, when you put those in there, that adds validity to your writing. It adds validity. Hey, she knows what the hell she's talking about. When you talk about where the keffiyeh is when they're wearing it, or the colors, or I'll read it and I'll read a book, and they where the location of a piece of clothing was in the wrong spot. I'm like, wait a second, were they really in the right spot? Where were they? Where were they at? But I know you were, but that's helpful us, and it brings us back. I tell you, when I read your stuff, it's like, God, I remember working in Erbil. I remember up into Hook on the border, and it. So your book helps us to, and helps myself even like remember the stuff I did, and it makes me happy reading about it, and then reading from your. And you actually you're embedded with, and I want to get into that. You were embedded with some of the Peshmerga, even to the depth of being. Yeah, that is not easy to do. From experience, I know that's not easy to do. How did you manage that? And I know it took you over time to do it. Explain that, how difficult that is.
So I spent, a lot of time Peshmerga and also Iraqi army, which was separate. But I think for me, before I'd even gone to cover, I'd made some really good connections through mutual friends of mine that had worked in the tech kind of space in Erbil, and who had connected me with some very well-connected people there. And so I already had the connection a little bit initially before I went. And then, when you're back and forth with someone and you kind of get to know them, so that when you see them in person for the first time, and the Kurds are extremely welcoming and hospitable people, so they kind of take you in and under their wing. And so from that, it comes down to just, really vetting your people, networking, and they were always really, they always really wanted their story told. They wanted to, they wanted a journalist and a writer to come in there and see what was happening and see what they were doing. And especially in the early days, so much of what, they were such a ragtag kind of army. They didn't have the equipment. They were fighting. Erbil and Baghdad have notoriously had a lot of conflict. So their side of the story was that Baghdad wasn't giving them their fair share of the weapons and the money that from the budget for that. And by law, they couldn't really get that from other countries because, Iraq as a unified country had to go through Baghdad. So I think Erbil really wanted to show the world what they were doing to fight ISIS, how difficult it was for them. They were bringing their AK-47s from home and were against a terrorist group that had U.S. weapons, that the Iraqi army had abandoned. So, I think they were always really determined to tell their story. So I never found getting in to be that bad, but we definitely had some interesting experiences, and they were always extremely respectful, always extremely caring, and for me as a journalist, the one thing that I always tried to also be mindful of is I didn't want them to have to take their sights off their fighting in order to protect me. So that's always a balance, because they are so protective to the point where I'm like, I don't need 5 people right now. I'm okay. But they're really, really, really great fighters.
So it's been such a long time since I've been there, but did you find that what you're talking about, that Iraqis, that Baghdad at all, you already said it, to what extent were they not providing the Kurds weapons, the stuff they needed? And in my opinion, if we gave the Kurds what they needed, they could probably stabilize the region.
Right.
We don't. And we don't as well because of, I think some of it's Turkey. You can correct me if I'm wrong too, because but how bad was it? Is it still that bad where they're not getting anything that they need from us, and they're just fighting by their wits and by their strong and their courage, more so than having their armaments? Is it still that bad? And is there a way we can fix that?
I think over time, I definitely noticed it improved. So from the beginning, and from Baghdad's point of view, it was that, their claim was that they weren't receiving the oil money from that Erbil owed them. So this always tit for tat. So in the beginning, it was terrible. And definitely over time, I did start to notice that I think other countries had started to come in. I think there was an agreement with the US at one point, and the US had definitely amplified its base there. So I think things definitely improved for them, especially toward, as we're going into that Mosul offensive and after that. But in the beginning, it was super terrible. And the issue is that it's very hard for the US or for other countries to kind of say too much, because it is a sovereign country, and the way that Washington often views it is that that's up to them to resolve. It's an internal dispute, and our withstanding policy, as is most of the EU, is that Iraq is a unified country and Kurdistan is semi-autonomous. Obviously, the Kurds would love to have their own country. I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I do think, it's a tough spot. But I think definitely there was big red flags in the sense that they needed help that they didn't get. And what happened, I think, in the beginning too, is because the U.S. had pulled out of Iraq at the end of 2011. So there was this little vacuum, and both Erbil and Baghdad had to rely on Iran, because when ISIS kind of came in and they were both scrambling, and Iran is a 3-hour flight away, and they were able to come in and provide a lot of the weapons and fighters and assistance, and that to push ISIS back. And so, even the Kurds were like, well, what are we supposed to do? We had to take Iran's help. The US wasn't here, and it would take the US even to kind of mobilize all its assets. That was going to take some time anyway. And Obama, initially viewed it as the JV team. So I think, that automatically pushed them a lot closer to Iran, which counters the U.S. interest. So it was a messy situation all around.
But people don't realize that. Go ahead, Ian. Go ahead.
No,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, one of the interesting things, at least from what I know, which is less than you guys, I mean, I haven't been on the ground there, but about our allies there, is there's this perception that we should be over there, that they need to form some Jeffersonian democracy and they need to be like America is. But from what I know about a lot of the rebel groups there, whether it's and I don't know the philosophy of each of them, but whether it's the PKK, the YPJ, a lot of them are socialist in nature. They don't share our values, but they do share our values in that they want to eliminate terrorism.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of the PKK, it's a Marxist ideology. And a lot of people don't realize that. But, with that comes, a different treatment of women and certain different sort of standards. So, there's always going to be a trade-off, and we have to decide, do we prefer that, or do we prefer extreme, Islamic extremists? So there is going to be a trade-off in that.
But the point I'm making sort of is, I think that the objective should be, like, as Chris would say, eliminating the threat more than changing the hearts and minds of these people to think exactly like us, because a lot of them don't want what we have. They want something completely different. They just want to be able to live in somewhat a peaceful situation where they're not threatened by ISIS.
I think we've moved away from that. I'd like to think we've moved away from that model a lot. I think in the beginning, after 9/11, there was this sort of surge of making Afghanistan, and then later Iraq, some kind of liberal democracy. I feel like we've moved away from that. And I definitely know, when Trump came in, his objective, whether people agree or not, was just to eliminate ISIS. It wasn't to, take out Assad. It wasn't to give Kurdistan its own country. It wasn't all these other things. It was a very one straightforward mandate. And I think that made it easier for a lot of the generals and the US side of things on the ground, because the mandate was clear and it wasn't being muddied by those sort of nation hearts and minds kind of objectives. That wasn't on the table then. So that it made the mission very clear.
Well, we've learned that hearts and minds doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. I've seen it. It doesn't work. It's just, hey, let's get in there and do what we need to do, and then get the hell out. Somebody hits us, you go and hit the shit out of them, and then you get out and you let the Barzanis and the Talibanis, whether you agree with them or not, you got to let them work it out. You got to let them figure it out. And I lived on Barzani's compound for a year off and on, and you're right. He's a pretty hard, and you know him probably better than I do. he's a pretty hard-nosed guy, but he knows he doesn't want terrorism in his country. And I saw Erbil. I saw Christians and Muslims and Yazidis. I saw everybody living together. Yes, I saw a caste system, just like we have low income and high wealthy people. It's the same. But I really saw it working more or less than the rest of the countries I've been in. So having that hearts and minds mandate that we had when we first started work, it was a complete mistake. And that's good to hear that we maybe are learning from our mistakes, whether it's as quick as we would have liked it to be. But it's good to hear that. And that's good that you saw that there, because I wasn't able to see that. I still saw the hearts and minds crap that we shouldn't have been doing, in my opinion. Hey, well, you being there and we're going to get into your book, but we want to get into, because we started talking about the hearts and minds, the children that you started to see. And I guess I want to know your first experience of whether it was good or horrible, of when you started to see, hey, the children are the one that are caught in the mess of this, and where you started to, where your book went as well. Can you talk about that? And it can be raw as you want it to be, but you can get into it as deep as you want it to be too. And it can be happy or sad. I just want to know, because that's something that as guys like myself, we see, but we don't involve with it. We want to help, but our mission is not to help the children. But man, when you see a young girl or a boy get blown up off a bomb that was probably for you, it hurts. So, can you talk about that a bit, if you could?
Absolutely, yeah. So for me, what I really wanted to do in the book is, and there's definitely a lot of military aspect in the book, but I really wanted to highlight, a lot of stuff away from, as journalists, we call it the bang bang. So I really wanted to, go in and really draw out those human experiences and that human impact of what war is. And obviously children play a big part in that. And, there's just so many different components of it, and it's sad. And it's just, there's just so many children with lost childhoods, and it's hard to just kind of, I think there were moments where you become very overwhelmed by it, because everybody has problems, and everybody, and over time, I just sort of started to see that they talked about, it was almost like they complain less, but they complain less in the sense that it was losing hope that anybody was ever going to be there to kind of help them. And that was always really the sad part for me. And the Yazidis, I spent a lot of time with them, and just sort of the atrocities that the Yazidis girls and the boys endured was just shocking to me. So many of the boys were taken and forced to convert to Islam and become these child soldiers, and were held as human shields, and really put through the most horrific kind of indoctrination. And for the fortunate ones that managed to get us to escape, they were going back to camps without any sort of professional help. There was a situation where one of these young boys tried to behead his baby sister at a camp, because that was the indoctrination that he'd been taught, and it was so difficult for his mother to try to do that. And the Yazidis were just heartbroken by this idea that for the first time they would have Yazidi terrorists, and that was just something that was never in their religion. Yeah. This is a religion that predates Christianity and Islam, and for the first time, that's what they were dealing with is Yazidi terrorists. And then, of course, the girls and the women, and there's thousands of them still missing, were all the ones taken as the sex slaves. And I'm talking girls as young as 8. And, again, what they endured is just, it's so hard to wrap our heads around it, that this was ongoing for so long, and yet we were so incapable of being able to do anything about it. And so that was always really heartbreaking for me. But what was extraordinary is that really for the first time I saw in these communities within the Yazidis is that they were shattering so many of the taboos. So sexual violence being something that was always something you never talked about that happened, something that was, it was too shameful to talk about. And so the women were often the ones that were sort of made to feel ashamed of it. But with the Yazidis, it was quite extraordinary in that they were really speaking out about what happened to them and shattering a lot of those notions. And I just think what they've done for that issue as a whole and going forward is going to make a really big difference in sharing their stories. So yeah, it's been a journey, and you see such incredible resilience at the same time as you see sort of just this sense of sadness that you can't do anything about. And there was one particular moment that I just remember feeling so helpless, because I was in the city of Sinjar, and it was completely rubbled, and it was basically just a few military people living there. It wasn't safe for anyone to go back. And I found this man who'd gone back to his house, and he had 2 young children. And it was so heartbreaking, because he was telling me that he had nowhere to live. He couldn't stay at the camp. And his wife had been taken, and the children's mother had been taken by the Daesh. And he got a call one day that said, if you pay me $10,000, I will give you your wife back. And this poor farmer with nothing, scrounging around for months. And people are so generous too. And that's the other beautiful thing about so many of these communities, is they'll do whatever they can. They'll give you the clothes off the back to try to get a lot of these people back. So eventually he manages to raise the money. He calls the captor back, and the captor says, "Oh no, the price is doubled now." And he just, threw up his hands and said, I can't bring my wife, my children's mother back. There's no way I can afford it." And, that sense of just overwhelming helplessness. And I'll never forget that. And I think I also felt especially helpless, because I knew that there was nothing I could do personally, in terms of giving him money or getting an NGO to give him money either from the US, because that would have been classified as funding terrorism. So it's those sort of moments where you really you can't do anything, except share the story, because we can't do anything to help them legally. So yeah, I think it's just been heartbreak. It's been a heartbreaking process, and those kids are still living in camps for the most part, and it's even worse conditions now, because ISIS is not the center of attention, and so the funding for that has completely dried up. And I think we move away from things so quickly, and we sort of forget that they're left to deal with the trauma and the lack of resources and help.
That's what I always say. We go into countries, it's like a party. We go in there, we mess their whole place up, and then we leave and let them clean up the mess. And it's sad that still happens, but you're exactly right. Did you ever feel threatened when you were there? I mean, because you're an American, or even if they didn't think you were American, you're not Kurd, you're not Iraqi. You're trying to get the stories out where, and one thing terrorists do know, they know propaganda, they know social media, they know how to paint a picture. They're excellent at painting pictures on social media, and you're painting a different picture than what they're trying to get out there, or so forth. So did you have a price on your head? I never asked you this. I wanted to ask you this a few times, and I just forgot. Was there a price on your head, or was there hey, let's get that little damn American that keeps putting out this stuff to the U.S. people and tell them the truth? Was there any of that? Because you were there during all that time. For
sure. I mean, no price that I'm aware of, but I think there were definitely, and more of my, I guess, more hairy experiences were generally not in Kurdistan, or more in the south of Iraq or Baghdad. I never felt especially threatened personally by ISIS, but I do. Yeah, I think that there was a couple of situations with the Iranian militias. I remember that feeling an extreme sort of sense of anxiety. I remember going to interview one of these militias at his house in Baghdad, and being with, my fixer, who's sort of what we call sort of interpreter, and they kind of help with logistics, and our driver being kind of at the front, and I'm just going in with her, and she was wonderful, still a close friend now. And so going to this Iranian militia guy's house, and you always have to strike that balance of, I'm there as a journalist. I'm not there to interrogate you. I'm not there to stick it to the man. I'm just simply there to get your story. And so I always make that very clear. But I remember in this sort of situation, this guy starts off with, bragging about the Americans that he'd killed in 2003.
This is Iranian. This is Iranian.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's Iraqi, but he that he answers to Iran essentially. And then, and so long story short, so he's sort of bragging about this. And I guess for me, I think I was fortunate a little bit in being Australian. I was viewed as a little bit less threatening than perhaps if I had just been American. I think it always seemed to make a difference when, I spoke and people said you're Australian, and I said yes. And even though Australians are completely over there and have been over there since the beginning, they didn't always see that. They just see it as America. So that made it a little easier anyway. But yeah, he's sort of bringing in more and more and more of these militia guys, and they're all coming in, and it's just me. And next thing, I'm sitting in this room with probably about 30 or 40 armed Iranian militias, and they've got the hookah, and they're all.
This really sounds like stuff of a movie.
Yeah, and then the next thing you know, the one guy says, "Well, I'm taking you to meet Qasem Soleimani in Iran. We're going on the private plane." And I said, "Oh, thank you for the offer. I think I'll pass." But it was just one of these situations, and then the door was locked, and I just looked at my, I had a sort of a code word with my fixer, and I just said, we need to call the driver, and we need to leave right now. And she was kind of, smoking the hookah and eating the food and enjoying it. I was like, no, we need to go now. So that was sort of a red flag for me. But I think a lot of it, and I got out and I was fine. But a lot of it is, I know it sounds funny, but it's so intuition based. There are so many things that I think I really have to tap into this kind of sense of what I know in my gut is going to be a right thing and a wrong thing. And yeah, my intuition has definitely never led me astray, but I've relied on it, probably more than what most sane people would think, is a good thing. But it's hard to explain. And there's something about being in that Mesopotamia, this beginning of civilization, that there's something different about it where I feel like I can very much connect to where my mind needs to be and what is happening that I don't experience in a lot of other places. And so Iraq's definitely been a place for that. But
it's romantic. It's very romantic. I loved being. I've said it myself. I was my best person in the Middle East. Amidst all that craziness, and it feels. You don't feel like I feel like Lawrence of Arabia sometimes, but there are times where it's like, wow, this is where everything started. This is so beautiful here, and you just feel alive, and you do. Your senses are up. Granted, though, I don't know how you let yourself get locked in there. That would have been like a red flag to me. As soon as I heard the click in the lock, okay, it's time for us to climb out the window. It's time to get out of there. Ian, I know I'm monopoly. I always do this.
No, not
I monopolize the conversation.
No, not the least.
It wouldn't have been fun to end up, when someone's playing in Iran or my parents a heart attack.
Yeah, for real. The one thing I'm curious about is, these amazing stories that you have from all of these different countries doing all the reporting that you have. It's got to be strange that, you're the one on the ground doing all this, and this always gets overshadowed by Chris, like the cause of the day or the cause of the week. And I feel like there's like a huge disconnect between the American public and what's actually going on in the Middle East, probably because there's so few people who voluntarily serve. And there's, like in the town I live in right here, James Regan, was an Army Ranger who died from here, but he's like the only guy from around here who served in combat. And I think most people, they don't see past the borders of America, really.
Sure. And that for me is something that I always wanted to try to do, was really bring back those experiences, and just to make people sort of see it in that very human light. So sort of the human to human experience. I think, it's always going to be tough. It's always going to be, world reporting is always going to take a backseat to whatever's happening. And I think that's always been the case. I remember talking to journalists who were covering Bosnia and things in the 90s, and they would complain about the same thing where, Princess Diana did something and that would sort of overshadow, that war. And so for me, it would be sort of something similar. I think I remember working on a story at one point, and then Kim Kardashian did an Us thing in a martini glass or something. And
I remember that it broke the internet. Yeah.
And I remember, so my story was sort of overshadowed by that,
which is crazy when you think about it. And it says a lot about the attention span of the American people, because if what they wanted to know was what you're reporting on, it would be higher in demand. Like, this is what we want to see, unfortunately.
But I don't just, and American people are often extremely receptive to these stories and they want to learn more. But I also blame, sometimes a lot of the news organizations bury the stories too, and they don't give them the placement and the time and the attention that they deserve. When I think, American people want to learn about it, but if it's not going to be right there in front of your screen, or when you click on your mobile app and you have to kind of dig through and find it, it's not going to get the attention it needs. And I think if it was given the placement that it often deserves, it would. So I think the media has become a much more clickbait driven sort of society, and it wants to spoon feed people what it thinks people want to see, and people click on that because it's in front of them. But I think they would also click on these stories if it was in front of them too. And the fight is always to get the stories to the attention that they deserve.
Well, I think part of it is, though, that people also like things that they could easily react to, and they easily have an opinion on. What's your opinion on Black Lives Matter? Everyone is going to have an opinion, where whatever it is. When it comes to the stories you're covering, I think it's much more complex. I can't just watch a 2-minute sound blurb from you and say, we're doing the right thing, we're doing the wrong thing. These are way more complex issues that people need to read into. And I think people like things that they can have an opinion on immediately. It's like this fast food journalism type thing.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of gray areas. It's not a black and white thing. There are no absolute answers with any of this, and so that makes it hard. But I try to humanize it to a degree, and I try to make it something that is a little bit more easily digestible and something that people can relate to, even if the subject matter is heavy. I do think that things that people, and there's so much that we can all relate to, no matter where we are in the world. We can relate to that human experience and what a child is going through, and or even if it's something, what is it like to have to run from your home? What is it like to, what do you take with you? All those kind of little things I always think are really interesting from a psychology point of view to teach people. How do you teach children the reason why they had to run from their homes? How do you explain that it was your neighbor that suddenly turned his gun on you? And these are things that, hopefully we never really have to deal with in the United States, but I think that they're important things just in that human experience for everybody to understand.
I think
if I could just follow up on one thing, and now I'm
no.
I'm going to let Chris go right after me. But oftentimes we say, the media isn't covering this. And it's actually more so like what you said. You could find these articles on Fox and CNN, but it's buried somewhere. I think when people say the media isn't covering, what we mean is like when you turn on CNN, Fox News, if you turn it on for 5 minutes, chances are you're not going to hear these stories. So what I'm wondering, and you could be as candid about it as you want or not, as you said, you're no longer at Fox News. I'm just curious, did they ever try to put a spin on what you're reporting to make it fit their agenda, or try to get you not to cover something that might challenge the agenda that they're putting out there?
Sure. I've been very fortunate throughout my career, and it's been that I think that I've had great relationships with my bosses and my managers and superiors who've always really supported me. And especially early in my career, I had it was instilled in me these very old school journalistic values that I think carry through regardless. And it was always, for me, I was very old school in that I always wanted to get everybody's side of the story. And I think I'm not great with rules. I'm not great at being told what to do.
I'm not really.
So I think if anyone had tried to tell me what to do, I probably would have just been like, huh?
Now, come on, be honest. You wouldn't have been, huh? You would have been, okay, go F
something else. Maybe
F yourself.
Maybe a little bit more explicit. But yeah, I think I pretty much established myself fairly early in that I was going to do things my way in the way that I thought was right. And no one ever really questioned that. I worked very independently, so I've always been that kind of free spirit who works fairly independently and runs off to wherever she needs to go for a few weeks and comes back and files and does her work then. So I think for me, and I can only speak from my experience, I've always been very firm in maintaining that. I needed to cover things from all sides of the story. Having said that, I also think it's really important for any journalist to understand who their audience is. So, to a degree, you also want to understand what's going to appeal to the readership. And so, I think that's always a crucial thing as well. And that's always something that I considered, but it definitely didn't cloud my objectivity or my desire to ensure that each voice was kind of heard.
Yeah, well, and by embedding yourself in the groups that you're reporting on, there's not many that do that anymore, at least not overseas, or I would even say here in the States. It's more of, okay, let's search what somebody else is writing, or let's see what somebody else says. It's not first-person journalism anymore, at least, and I'm not a journalist at all, but you don't see that anymore. And and what's your take on that? Is it real journalism? Are we getting secondhand information that somebody's trying to piece together with little here, a little there, than actually getting human intelligence? This is what happened. This is from the horse's mouth. I'm writing it down this way, because I don't see that at all.
Right.
I think you're one of the last persons that I've seen do that. And now, like I said, you're no longer really doing it for Fox or anybody else. You're still doing it, but that's why journalism is called fake news now. That's why we don't have real journalism.
Yeah, so, it is. And I'm a big, believer that we need to have people on the ground, and we need to have somebody interpreting that information, because, you can see on Twitter, and it happens so much, is pictures will be posted of a protest, and this is happening here, this is happening here, and you're like, this picture was taken into Melbourne or something, and if nobody's kind of vetting that or understanding that, then it gets shared 500,000 times, and suddenly everyone's saying this is what's happening at a certain place, and it happens so much. And then also the other thing I found in this sort of citizen journalism, and social media can be great for so many things, but someone needs to be interpreting that information sort of firsthand. Is diaspora communities have this suddenly huge influence over what's happening, and it's one thing to be pushing a sort of a revolution or a movement and saying this and this and this in Tehran when you're sitting in the safety of Washington DC, and then the story gets muddled and twisted, and maybe protests are made to be things that they aren't, or that's then endangering people that are there, that are involved in it, because it's receiving a different push. And policymakers, they don't really know what the hell's going on often, so they're just taking whatever the news article is or whatever's coming out on Twitter and making huge decisions based on that. So the repercussions are still just as big, but often the information is not being it's being manipulated, and not often by ill intention, but it's just being manipulated to suit a certain agenda without somebody kind of being there to say, well, this isn't really the full picture. And I think that's what it comes down to. We're getting portions of the picture and not the whole thing. And that is that's the challenge.
Well, and that's there. You said repercussions. I'll say that in another avenue. There are no repercussions for misreporting. There's nothing more. Nobody gets if like the pictures of the protests or something that's wrong. It's 5 years earlier, or this happened here. No, it didn't. It didn't happen in Italy. It actually happened in Columbus, Georgia. I mean, I know you're not going to confuse those two, but there's no repercussions. Nobody is held accountable when there is misreporting. So all I see now is misreporting, and it just goes down the line. It is. When did it go that route? I'm shocked that it's gone that far, where people can just report whatever they want, and if it's wrong, so what? And not even an apology.
I think that's a social media advent. I think when social media sort of took over as being the main way people were engaging and getting their news, and anybody could publish whatever they wanted. Anybody could publish whatever they wanted, a blog, a video, a YouTube, a Facebook Live, whatever it may be. and suddenly there were no standards anymore. And granted, I also think it's great. I don't think that journalism should, you shouldn't have to be belonging to a specific news organization or have a membership in XYZ to be a journalist. I think it's really important to have other voices, but it's become so noisy. It's become so noisy, and to the point where, it's very hard for anybody to kind of know what they're seeing, and nobody really has control over the narrative. So there are so many narratives that you can't piece it together. And I just hope that there's always going to be a place for that old school storytelling, and a trusted place for that. But news organizations also need to invest in that to a degree too. It can't just be a quick job or a cut and paste from what so-and-so says on Twitter. I think there needs to be a big investment in that on-the-ground reporting. And I think, too, what people also don't understand, the value in on-the-ground reporting, not only in getting that full picture and the dynamics of what's happening, is that you retain those relationships. At least in my case, every day I'm on Signal or WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, and I'm sort of still in touch with my sources from all different walks of life and all different countries, and they're filling me in on things, and I'm able to engage with them in a different way. So you carry those with you even in times when you're not on the ground, but you really need to have some of that ground experience in order to establish those relationships and kind of just understand the dynamics, the little innuendos that you just can never pick up from an ivory tower.
One thing I could say is, and Holly and I are definitely closer in age. I think our generation gets a lot of shit from the older generation. But the one thing I think
what do you say? What are you saying?
And Chris is giving me the middle finger. But the one thing I could say that I will credit our generation, millennials, whatever, they call us, even though I think millennials is a weird word, because I think if you experience 9/11, right, it's a little different than people who were born in like 2000. But the point being, I've just noticed from my own experience, people in our age bracket are very good, I think, at cross-referencing news articles from different sources and getting to the truth. And I do always see that it's the boomers that fall for the fake news all the time. Not that Chris is a boomer. He's
totally
younger than boomer. But it is the people in like my mom and dad's age range who will see something and they have to ask me, is this real? Well, I don't know. Google it. See if it's being reported on by different independent sources. There should never be. I always think it's bad when I hear people, and it is people online, say, I only trust Fox or OAN or CNN. You do that. There's untrustworthy people at all those organizations. There's a few good people at all of them. Do your research. Don't trust any one source.
Yeah, no, you need to do your research and just be careful of those obscure blogs. Be careful of them. There's so many of them, and I don't know where they come from, but just be careful.
Well, that's where I guess me. I'm an Xer, right? Is that what I am? Gen X. I'm almost.
I think so.
Fit, and I do. I still love, and I think my service also, and me being deployed as well. I still love. Hey, were they there? If they weren't there, I don't want to freaking hear it. I don't want to know it, and that's why. I always wanted to hear what Holly had to say, even when I was going over there. Hey, what are you seeing? Are we talking about something? Because it would help me when I would go over there. Like, okay, well, she said this was happening. I'm going to be on Barzani's compound. I better keep my wits about me, or something to that effect. But so when I came back, it was reporters like Holly or the embedded reporters that we had early days of Iraq that. Yeah, I would look for those names. If they were there and they were in country, then okay, I'm getting the right news. If they weren't, right. And again, I've had to learn from Ian the other way too. I've had to because I can't just go that route because people lie on the ground as well. But generally, you find that it's true. But it's tough because if they weren't there, it's hard for me to take them at face value. I was like, no, you weren't there.
And what I found to be, problematic, I guess is the right word, and I'll relate this back to you too, Chris, is I found that, even when we send over our troops there, that they're not allowed to step over that line outside the wire, and they're not, for me, they're not getting that full picture. And that is problematic to me.
No, you're right.
When US, and a lot of these changes, there was big changes that actually happened after Benghazi. So things got really locked down after that. And that was across the world. Yeah. And I found that, in Afghanistan, I would, I'd go to the, what was the mission there? The Resolute Support, right? In Kabul. And I talked to, these soldiers and things who'd been, spent a year or whatever there. And I would sort of ask them questions about, opposition or people that weren't in power or who was kind of coming in. And I just started to get the sense that the only train of information that was sort of coming in a lot of the time was from those who were vetted and approved by the U.S. military. But that was, just that one train of information. But if you go out on the street in Kabul and talk to the guy who owns that restaurant down the corner, he's going to have a very different opinion of what is wrong with his country. And the same thing in Iraq, that, I felt, it's difficult. I'm sure it's extremely frustrating for the men and women too in uniform who want to go out and be with the people and as much as they can and weren't able to do that. And I think that's, in my opinion, is a big way that we're not getting the sort of a full picture even from that policy.
When you're in country. Yeah. I was very lucky when I was with OGA that we could go wherever we wanted. I saw the difference for me going State Department, where we're going in as Americans, baddest boys in the block, and we have this way. And then when it was starting to live within the culture, live within the city, going out by yourself, going out, you did. Now you're right. I completely agree with you. I started to see things differently, and wait a second, right? And being immersed in the culture. And it made a heck of a lot of difference. So, yeah, I completely agree with you.
And that's where you get the trove of information from.
Yes.
It's government and officials are going to tell you a lot of things and valuable things, but it's the people on the ground. It's the way, and being a woman is actually a huge advantage because I have access to 100% of the population. So I can still, I'm sort of a third gender, so I can still go talk to them, and they don't expect me to act the way that they would expect.
Yes,
their women to act. But I'm also then able to go and sit with the women as well. So you have this amazing accent, and these women are just troves of information. They'll tell you a lot of things that the men will never tell you. So, and it's that just very raw on the ground sort of experience is where I've been able to really piece the dynamics together and get a lot of the information and the stories that I need that I would just never get from a government official that was spinning an agenda to be a certain way. And that's so crucial to me to be able to access that. And again, it goes down to the rules thing. I think it's probably why I became a journalist, because I don't have to abide by too many rules.
And did you say, and that's terrible that you did say, and I heard the same as well. I went to Yemen after Benghazi, and we were still able to move around quite a bit until honestly, we screwed that place up too. I was there when we cut around there as well. But is it that bad?
Oh my God. I think Yemen is just, it's a horrific place. It's the sort of place you go to where there just isn't anything.
There's nothing.
They're like, how is this? This isn't even a camp. Like, what is this? And horrific. And every third person is missing a limb, including children. Yeah. The level of starvation is horrific, and it's just baffling because you start to just think, well, what are we doing? I don't understand how nobody can help these people. I don't understand how a baby is starving right now. What are we doing?
And in 2013, the city's Aden, we were in Aden and we were in Sana'a. It was still thriving. In fact, I had my favorite coffee shop in Sana'a that I go to and get coffee, and art studio, and it did within 6 months. It was like end of 2013. It turned into that. And again, that's what we did. That's what we did, trying to create democracy. And that's my opinion. It's all my opinion. You may have different opinion, but that's what we did, trying to create democracy in a country. And again, we had our party there, and then we left it for them to clean up. And there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken downtown, a real Kentucky Fried in Sana'a. I mean, that's how wonderful that place really was. I mean, you had the outskirts, the cities, even you have the outskirts, but now the whole place is just, you're right. It's like a ghost country with just the maimed and the injured everywhere. It's terrible.
Yeah. And how much of it, I think really, so much of it comes down to passion. And I know in my time in Yemen, I would see the difference between the Houthis who sort of had this bigger overarching picture that they were very passionate about. And I think it's the reason they've been able to hold on to Sana'a and other places is because they just have this overarching passion for their group and their tribe and their belief system. And I'd also go out with the sort of the Yemeni soldiers who just never had that same sense of sort of passion and wanting to fight for their country. They were just happy as long as they could afford their cot and, pay get a little bit of a salary. There wasn't this overarching, we're going to go out and fight for Yemen. And I think that was a big thing that, the Kurds definitely have that. They stand over religion, over other things. And I think that was a problem with the Iraqi army in the beginning. And I've seen some really positive changes in them as well. But in the beginning, did they really want to fight for Iraq? Was it the Iraq that they cared enough about, or did they just need to feed their family? So I always think that makes such a big difference when, when you meet these militias or the armies and their passion is driven by something that's a big purpose. And then on the other side, if the passion and the purpose isn't there, they're just never going to succeed. And no matter how much training the United States or any other country can give them, support them, weapons or whatever, if it's not there, it's not there. And that's just the missing piece to having any kind of victory.
That's love of country. That's how we are too. The patriotism. You love your country, then you're going to fight for your country. If you don't, you're not. You're just going to collect all the cool gear that you can and collect the paycheck and go home. No, you're right. You're right.
You're going to sell that gear on the black market too.
Yes. I saw a lot of stuff on the they had a Blackwater store. I think it was in Kurdistan in Erbil. They had a
Kurdistan has every knockoff you can imagine at every bazaar. They have every 511 piece you get, like just everything you can find, and they'll sew patches onto everything. They'll sew American flags onto everything. That's like kind of their MO. Yeah. But
I know we're getting towards the end, but Ian, I know we probably got to wrap up here in a little bit.
Yeah, no, well, I just wanted to ask. I mean, when people pick up Only Cry for the Living, which is out this Thursday for the people listening, I mean, what's the main thing you want them to get out of this book that they probably are not getting elsewhere?
I just want people to have that really sort of human level understanding. So the book goes from 2014 through to 2018, and it's made up of memos, so you can, it's chronological, but you can sort of pick and choose what memos appeal to you. But what I want is people just to be able to really go below the surface, below the bang bang, and just see how these people live and the impact. And it's a question that I ask over and over in the book. What is war? What is war? What is war? Because it's so many different things to so many different people. And I want to just convey the human experience. I want to bring people into that country, into that room, and just hopefully people walk away with a deeper understanding of what it is, not only to live through these things, but to survive. And at the end of the day, there is just an incredible human resilience that exists through this. And I just love people just to give people maybe a less of a two-dimensional view of what war is and the sacrifices that are made, and just understand the nuances a little deeper and the impact of war a little deeper. From regardless of whatever your political persuasions are, whatever actions are taken there has an impact, for better or for worse. And I think that is the important thing for people to really understand is what happens when we go and what happens if we don't go.
That's awesome. I'm excited for people to pick this up. And you know what? I have to ask you something completely unrelated off of this because I promised that I would.
Yes.
I learned from your Instagram you are a fellow huge Motley Crue fan.
Yeah, I used to definitely. Actually, yeah, and I loved them growing up. My dad always listened, so I always had a bunch of t-shirts around. And back in my LA day, I actually did one of their reunion tours. I went on tour with them in Vegas.
Wait, which year was this? What year was this?
2000, and I'm trying to remember. It was the opening of the Hard Rock Hotel that they.
So this was the reunion they did, when they reunited again in like 2005.
Yeah, I want to say it's slightly after that, so maybe 2009.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I did that. So that was.
You got to hang out with them on the tour, everything.
Yeah, I got to hang out with them.
You have to have some awesome Motley Crue story. You have to.
They were all pretty sensible at that point in time. They're all had those days behind them, but it was.
But I'm sure it was a fun time, just in general.
It was a fun time. How can you not have fun in Vegas? Here's the thing. A lot of people complain about Vegas. When I go to Vegas, you do Vegas right.
She does.
Do Vegas right.
She does.
I did. I had a good time. So they put on like an opening show thing, and it was pretty awesome. I had a lot of fun. And my good friend Neil Strauss, who wrote their book, he gave me
great book.
Yeah, he was also extremely supportive through this book and gave me a great endorsement too. But that is a great book. Of all the music memoirs, I think that one has to be right up there with one of the best. If you haven't read it, read it after Only Cry. It's
the wildest, and it could never have been put out now.
No.
I mean, it is just way too debaucherous. Like after the whole Me Too movement, I mean, there's crazy stories in that book. It's one of the best. Like if you just want to read rock and roll debauchery, it is a great book. And I'm not saying model your life after any of this, but it's an interesting read for sure. You'll enjoy it.
Absolutely. And I was making a friend the other day watch the Girls, Girls, Girls music video because they'd never seen it. And it's
so great.
Isn't that a classic? And the hair and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Did you ever see? So you ever watch? You probably haven't, but there's a DVD of the Motley Crue video hits, and they do some commentary on it for each of the music videos.
Yeah.
So I thought was pretty interesting about that video. Nikki Sixx and Tommy Lee say that they knew MTV was going to give them some pushback for that video at the time because they said nowadays that would be tame, but at that time it was like over the top. And they said what they purposely did on the DVD, there's an uncensored version, and it's girls topless and it's way more over the top. And they said, this is Nikki Sixx kind of in his genius, said they submitted that version to MTV knowing that they were going to say, we can't play this on TV. And then he's like, we gave them the censored, air fingers quote, censored version, which is the one we intended for in the first place. And they were like, oh, guys, this is much better. And he's like, we knew that's what would happen. And he's like, but if we initially gave them that first one, they probably would have said, we can't play this. So that was his way of saying, you're right. Here's a taper version. Yeah. They're just, and I think Nikki Sixx is just such a business genius in the way that he's run the whole band. And it's really his band. I never got to see them in Vegas, but I did get to see Motley Crue a couple of times in Atlantic City, and it was always just an awesome time. I mean, they're just such a fun show. And there actually is some valuable stuff in that Strauss book as well about kind of the cogs in the machine and how they talk about how with every scene of music, especially when they put out Dr. Feelgood, for example, they were expected, they were done. They had their 10 years or whatever, and they managed to go above and beyond that. And they are a nostalgic 80s band, but they've somehow managed to still gain popularity with whether it's, the Dirt movie on Netflix and now this reunion with.
That really should have been a series. I think they left so much of the good stuff out of that.
Yeah.
If you're a fan, it's great. But if you don't know anything about them, you're probably kind of like, what the hell is this?
I was always disappointed that I was like, I didn't go to that last show. I was at the last tour, but I didn't go to the last show. And then sure enough, there was no last show because they reunite if we're ever able to go see a stadium show again, and they end up touring with Def Leppard, which was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But I had to ask you about it just because
will we ever go to a
huge nerd.
Will we ever go to a concert again? That's the thing.
Well, here's the thing. In Florida, everything's pretty much open.
I love Florida.
I don't know about the rest of the country.
I love Florida too. Yeah, it is open. It's pretty great.
CPAC is going on there right now, so.
And I'm sure you're not even sad that you're missing any of that crap at all.
I'm really, I'm really glad to be taking a little bit of a backseat to politics at the moment. It's good for my health.
Oh, you're
I fully agree. One last question, if you don't mind. The foreword for the book was done by Navy SEAL Jocko Willink. You were just on his show, which I know did really well. How did that relationship happen?
So Jocko is actually publishing. So my book is published under Jocko's umbrella. So I've known, sort of connected with him a while ago on a lot of his projects, and it was sort of a right fit in terms of incorporating some of that kind of military aspect, and then I'm hopefully bringing a little bit of the human sensibility, to the podcast, and a little bit of the feminine, yes, I cried in this particular situation, approach to it. So it was a good fit for this project. So it's been great.
Well, you're respected in the community, by Jocko, by myself, by many others because you've been around. We all know who you are, and we knew you before the book, and we know you're a tremendous writer. You've made me sound good in interviews where I'm like, holy shit, I'm glad Hollie wrote that, because that's not how it came out of my mouth, but it sounded a hell of a lot better how she wrote it. So amazing. And
thank you, for your support over the years. I know we've been friends a long time, but it's been valuable getting your opinion on things, getting your assessment on things, and always, you're extremely honest human being. So I always know you're telling me exactly how it is, and I do. I really appreciate it.
No, you're my best friends. So whatever you need, and thank you for being on the show. We got to have her on again, because we still got to talk about the bullet shortage with her, because I know we've had opinions on that. Actually, one of the last stories you wrote was the bullet and toilet paper shortage that we wrote about 3-4 years ago. And have her back on with that, and then I want to hear more about the Motley Crue stuff.
Yeah, it's funny you're saying 3 years ago. I was like, bullet.
Oh, was it 2 years ago? 2 years ago?
I was just going to say bullet and toilet paper shortage. I would think you're talking about America right now.
Well, the toilet paper's coming back. It's still the bullets. Was it 2 years ago? So
you're talking about in America?
Yeah. When the toilet paper shortage first happened, we don't have a toilet paper shortage anymore.
1 year ago.
1 year. See, that's what happens.
Your time frame. I was like, are we talking about Iraq? Or are we talking about America?
I don't watch any news anymore. I'm never on it, and it does seem like a long time ago. It's right. That's what you're here for, Ian, to correct me. And when
arrange day, that's what we'll do. We'll do a range day in Florida.
Yes, a range day in Florida. You got it.
Yeah.
Deal.
I would go for that. Deal. That's awesome. So once again, at Hollie S. McKay on Twitter and Instagram. That's HOLLIE SMCKAY. And then also the organization you work for, Burnt Children Relief, helpbcrf.com, in which you're the outreach director. And March 4th, the book comes out, Only Cry for the Living, Memos from Inside the ISIS Battlefield. And honestly, you don't really need our help selling it, because, like I said, #1 in the category right now.
Awesome.
It's a huge accomplishment for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks, Hollie. And we'll talk
Thank you, Hollie.
You let me know if you need anything, and we'll keep pushing the book for you, okay? And I'll get some more stuff up on my Instagram as well.
I love it. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great having Hollie McKay on. Guys, pick up the book. Really appreciate her joining us and being very candid. And it's great to see real journalists out there on the ground, boots on the ground, doing what they should be doing. So I appreciate you making that introduction, Chris.
No, she's been a friend forever, since when I started to go on the news. When was that? 5, 6? It's been a long time now. Geez, longer than that. But she was one of the ones that I actually trusted, and because she never ever put her words into what I was saying. She'd make me sound bad, so my grammar was correct. But she was one of the ones where it was, if I said it and I meant it this way, then that's how she wrote it down. And then I've also, you do have respect for a journalist that's going over these places, and you know how dangerous they are, because I'm going there, and she's going there really on her own with little security, and that's not a safe thing to do. So you get some respect for that, which I did. And then she's just a very, very nice human being. She's like, and I don't want her to take this the wrong way, but she's like hanging out, when you're hanging out with, it's like hanging out with one of the dudes. It is. She's like, yeah, what's it? Like, let's go. And she can drink and smoke guys under the table. So, no, really good friend and a lot of respect for her. And any success that she's getting, which she's going to get plenty of success with the book. She's already had a successful career in journalism with Fox. It's well deserved because she's worked her ass off for it, and she's put herself in harm's way to gain the knowledge that she has, which is respectful in itself. So, congratulations to her, and thanks for letting her come on the show, bro.
Of course, at any time. So yeah, that's about it, guys. As always, support the sponsors. The links to those are all in the description. They help us do what we do. If there's any listening platform that you didn't see us on, it was because we switched the RSS feed from SoundCloud to Simplecast. So I had a few people say that they didn't see it on iHeartRadio anymore. I think all of that is fixed now. If you have any issues, though, shoot us an email, battlelinepodcast@gmail.com. And I think that's it. Thanks, guys.
That's all for this episode of the Battleline Podcast, but we'll be back on Monday with more American straight talk. Until then, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Battleline Podcast and on Twitter at Battleline Pod. To sign up for future Battleline tactical courses, go to www.christantoperanto.net. Believe in yourself, face all challenges head on, and as always, never quit.